Hello everyone, welcome again to the session. In this particular session, we'll be discussing about security and authorizations of assets or data sets inside BigQuery. So, if you see, BigQuery is a data warehouse. It gives a lot of ways wherein you can protect your assets, your data from network outside. But protecting doesn't means that the right people should not access it. So security is when you have the security in place, the right people access your data sets with the right amount of permissions, and you as an owner of the dataset can eventually decide who sees what and where. Okay, so all of this we are going to deep dive into this session. This will be a theoretical session. We'll be doing a demo for this later. So let's begin with the session. So first comes the very first layer of giving or providing access is the IAM. IAM stands for Identity Access Management. This is the base layer wherein uh, you can give a full access based on the roles. So if you want a user to have a viewer or editor roles, there were legacy roles which were already there, but BigQuery and GCP have moved to a better roles, right? So which, for example, BigQuery.data viewer, okay, BigQuery.data editor. Instead of giving role on a particular data set, or you can on a particular project you can give roles on a particular data set. Okay, you can also give access on a particular table, so you can give grained access. But the context is that if you have access, which means if you have BigQuery data viewer, you can still view all the tables and all the tables are exposed to you. Okay, but in case you want a finer access, if you want that the user should not actually see the raw tables, okay, then how can I limit it? With roles slash BigQuery dot data viewer, you are assigning that role to a data set, which means all the tables under it a user can query and see the tables. But if you want that user should have a specific data access via any SQL query, then there is another way to do that, that is authorization. Now authorization is via authorized views, authorized routines, and authorized data sets. So what is an authorized view here? Okay, authorized view is you can share a specific query results. Okay, view we all know as a data set, as data engineer, that views are nothing but a queries, which gives the output. So authorized views are nothing but they are authorized to run the queries on your behalf. Okay, which means you create an authorized view, place it in an authorized data set, and user will not have access to your data set, which is your actual tables. They will have access to the authorized views in another data set. So, what is authorized dataset? Authorized dataset is a container of all the authorized views. Okay, so all the authorized views are contained in one dataset, and there is another dataset from which you want to see the data, but there is a raw tables. So you prepare another dataset which is an authorized dataset. In that authorized dataset, you tell that dataset that okay, this dataset can access the tables but via views. Okay, so which means you are not exposing the raw tables. Okay, authorized routines are something wherein people can run a certain logic, okay, or a function on that data that they cannot directly view. So if you want the people to run some logic or a function on someone else's data, okay, they can share the data to expose the data to you. You can modify it via authorized routines. Okay, so they, as in the client, can do that via authorized routines. So you can run sprocs, okay, stored procedure, to modify it via authorization, authorized routines. Now imagine you have everything in place, okay, authorized views, authorized datasets. People cannot touch your tables, okay. Once they have this access, now you want to make sure that the network from which they are connecting to. So let's say once you log into a BigQuery console and you log in from your laptop, this is a public internet, okay. You are not connected to any VPN, okay. Now, since you are not connected to any VPN, is there an option that in BigQuery you create a shell kind of it, so that network you enter from, BigQuery knows that this network is actually the network I trust and I can share the data over this. Right now, if you query BigQuery from your local console, what you see is the data coming from a public IPs. Okay, it's public internet. It's open to all. Okay, it is not that you have closed or created one tunnel out of it. So it is not tunneled. Anyone who can see the data in between your network can access that data. Okay, there can be a network attack and your data can be still hijacked. So what can we do for this? There is another approach. A grain goes down this, wherein you can lock the network, okay. So you can route the IPs via virtual private cloud, okay. So you can create virtual private cloud, and that virtual private cloud will be a secure parameter around BigQuery resources, so that whatever data stays, moves out or comes in, it comes from a one particular perimeter, okay. It crosses that perimeter, so nobody else outside that perimeter can access your data. How you can do? You have virtual private cloud, you have authorized endpoints which you can create in your regional endpoints. You can have network isolation, okay. You can block access of untrusted public internet. So if I as a client have one data set and I don't want person ABC with this particular IP address to fall into my ingress or outgress network to access the BigQuery, I can do that via network isolation. Now, see, even if you have, your perimeter defense, you already gave the rows.bigquery that data viewer on your authorized data sets. People are viewing from, the views. Okay. Is it something else also that we can do? Yes, there is more level into it. Okay. Now, since your network is locked, how you want to restrict particular columns or row level access, okay. So if you want to make sure that, okay, certain people should only see certain columns and certain people should only see certain amount of rows, how you can do that? So that also is provisioned by BigQuery. So you can enable row level and column level security in BigQuery. How? There is a way to implement column level security using policy tags, okay. So you can say that this particular column has this policy which is high security, okay, to restrict the access to specific sensitive columns, so that it will always be masked, okay. In that case you have masked that data, okay, or you are actually not showing that data, okay. You are actually not showing that particular column to someone. Then there is fine grained readers, okay. Only specific users explicitly granted a fine grained reader roles, okay, to see or on the tagged column. So you can create tags and that tags can be assigned to the particular users. Then talking about row level security, okay. Row level security is if you have 100 rows, out of which 5 rows are for India, 5 rows are for US, okay, and you want that only people in US should see the US data. So what is that? This is row level security. So you have to use identity based filters, okay. So when person logs in, you see the session ID or maintain the session ID, and you see via row level security what is the region. So you apply that row level security, and that also comes natively with BigQuery. So all of these three, column level security, fine grained readers access, and row level security, are natively coming up with BigQuery. Okay. Actually, people do create a separate set of logic for specifically row level securities and fine grained readers, wherein people create a view wherein they give that particular user, if or she logs in, then this match via or join via that table, and then filter out those rows. But natively also BigQuery gives a way to do that. Now, since you have blocked particular set of rows and also set of columns, okay, what if you want to hide or mask certain sensitive information? Okay, if there is an Aadhaar number or SSN specifically, or their medical history, HIPAA compliant, whatever the people are trying to see should be masked. That also can be done, and that is another level of security which comes from sensitive data protection, and that will be enabled by data loss prevention APIs. Okay, so what all you can do, you can do dynamic data masking. Okay, you can have differential privacy, you can protect the sensitive data, and you can enforce the user to only see the aggregated records. Okay, so these four uh, things comes by BigQuery natively, if they come, but they work in tandem with the data loss prevention APIs. Okay, how to do that, we will see one demo, and in that demo we'll learn more about this, how we can dynamically do a data masking. So for example, that you are seeing on the screen, let's say the SSN you have to mask. So there will be a masking engine which will be data loss prevention APIs, which will say SSN equal to null, and that SSN will be showed as a masked data. So whenever the user queries the data, he or she will see the data as masked or protected by masked algorithm, maybe SHA-256 or something else. Okay, and that will be dynamic. Now, since you have already masked the data, you want another level of protection or security, wherein you want, even if the data is masked, you want to protect it on the physical storage. Okay, when Google stores the data, okay, you want encryption on it. Okay, whenever anyone from their application tries to access the data, first they have to give the encryption key. So they should have an encryption key. Okay, then only it will be revealed that, okay, all certain layers which we have already discussed will follow, like the first layer which was IAM, second layer was uh, your let's go back and see what was the second layer. So all those layers will come into picture only after you have uh, successfully decrypted the data via encryption key. So IAM is there, then authorization, then perimeter, then row level, column level, then sensitive data protection. All of this will work only after you are able to decrypt the data. So there are six levels of protection and security that you can give. Now, in encryption also there are various ways. Default encryption automatically comes with by Google. All the data that is stored in BigQuery is encrypted. Okay. Then there is customer managed keys. So you manage the keys, okay, and you make sure whatever keys you are using, okay, that keys are managed by you over the cloud itself, and it is Google Cloud. Okay, and there are client managed keys also. Okay, so which is managed not on the cloud but on the client side, they manage the keys, and then you make sure you are incorporating in the BigQuery while querying the data. Now with all these six level, we'll see how we can and where we should use all of these. So if you want to grant reader access, okay, without legacy roles, okay, which is complete viewer access on a project, okay, then you can use one security tool, which is BigQuery data viewer, okay, which is newer roles, not legacy roles. If you want to share query results, best way is authorized views. If you want to stop the data over network, Okay, exfiltration means somebody from outside should not see your data while you are querying it. So you create one perimeter, which is virtual private cloud controls on top of it. If you want to, prevent user from querying specific columns, use policy tags, which is column level security. If you want any particular user not to see any particular rows, you can use row level security. If you want to allow some columns but want to hide, you know PII, which is sensitive information, then you can dynamically do data masking. And at the end, if you want, to maintain the direct ownership of physical encryption keys, and you want to own the encryption, then you can use CMEK via cloud KMS. So CMEK is client customer managed encryption keys. Okay, and cloud KMS is your key management system over cloud. So this was brief idea about security and authorization on BigQuery. So whenever in your interview questions you are asked about any sort of security sharing data, always think about this metrics: how you want to share the data, how will you place the data, how will you implement for a column or a row, you want to mask it, you want to physically have encryption keys on yourself, you want to grant uh, data viewer roles. So think from this matrix perspective, it will be very helpful. So thank you for attending this session. We'll see you in the next session. So keep learning, keep growing. Thanks. Bye bye.